Welcome to After Credits here on the Intercut podcast channel, where we review a new show, including everything that comes after the credits. I'm your co-host, Zachary Shevich, and joining me, he's like the hero of his own Italian opera. It's Arturo Zurita.
I also don't know if I may be in the minority here, but I think season two, if they're calling it season two of a limited series, it's better than season
Sicily?
one, bro.
I don't know if you are in the minority. It felt like a lot of the initial reviews that I saw from critics were saying that they liked season one more than season two, but as the
Oh.
as the show has like disseminated to most people and become weekly conversations on Twitter on Sundays, I feel like I've been hearing, maybe it's just anecdotally, but from a lot of people who now prefer season two to season one. Of course, now we also are at the finale of season two, so we see the
Yup.
whole picture. As you were mentioning before we started, we get an extra hour of it, as this one is 7 episodes long as opposed to the first season's 6 episodes. But yeah, another season full of exploits and hijinks and conspiracy theories and whodunits and questions that lingered over the season in the form of several dead bodies. But let's go back to the beginning and talk a little bit more generally about the White Lotus season two, White Lotus Sicily, depending on how HBO
Dep-
decides to
Depending
style
on
it
what
for
award circuit
SEO.
we're in, yeah.
The return to Mike White's limited but not so limited series
Mhm.
that follows a group of guests, employees, and locals at a luxury resort over the course of a week. The action is transported from Hawaii to Sicily in season two, as we're introduced to a whole host of new characters, as well as a couple returning characters, most notably Jennifer Coolidge's character of Tanya. Art, you mentioned it briefly at the beginning here, but just going back into White Lotus, what do you think about season two in comparison to season one? What is it that made this season stand out more to you?
I think it's the writing. I think a lot of what people liked in the first one, be it with the characters and the way that it was able to. I think we were discussing like the differences between the seasons and what they've talked in the after shows. Is that one was focused more on a lot of the racial politics, and you
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of like hierarchy stuff going on, especially with the workers and how they intermingled with the families there. Here you do have some workers, right? But like the workers are going through their own interplay. There's a lot more of the employees having to deal with like the characters of Lucia and her friend, where they're just the regular street people and trying to create that divide. Season two had the sexual politics that you had mentioned and has clearly been like the forefront of the show. And there's just something about how they break that down that I found to be more engaging. I found to
Mm-hmm.
be uh, i- a little bit better than the first season in the sense of how they were able to build the mystery. I also think the payoff of the finale is superior than the first one. It may not be the character that some people may want it to be, but I thought the way that they were able to execute the execution was perfect. I also think the setting was beautiful. You had some really good camera work this season. Obviously, because of the location that you have, you also were able to get some really good banter in the way that everyone was able to intermingle, and I looked forward to
Mm-hmm.
that. So I think for that alone, I have it a little bit ahead. Probably as much as I also have in this year of sequels. Knives Out 2, just a little bit ahead of Knives Out 1.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I would highly recommend it. Even if you didn't see the first one, or if you did and didn't like it, definitely give season two a chance.
Yeah, it definitely feels in some ways like its own unique thing. I still, even after the finale, lean more towards season one. I think there is something about the different conversations. Last time that we talked about White Lotus, we talked about how a lot of it feels like it was the conversations that were almost like ripped from Twitter and stuff like that. It's very,
Yes.
very hot button issues, very summer of 2020 politics. And I do think there is something about it that made it feel a little bit more live wire than the discussions of sexual politics, sexual power, the relationship dynamics that are part of season two. That maybe do feel a little more authentic to Mike White's point of view rather than like an aggregated point of view of lots of different people. But I don't know. I still feel like I was not quite as engaged with the characters this year.
Really?
Something else that I feel like I would ultimately put in season one's favor is I think it did a slightly better job of intermingling all the different threads. Like there was a lot more, at least in my memory, of different storylines bumping up against one another. Whereas I felt like season two maybe segmented its characters a little bit more. It's not something that made me dislike the season. I liked the season, but it's stuff
Hmm.
like that when it does finally all come together that maybe made it feel like it all came together a little bit more for me the first go around than in this version.
Season one was where? It was like in Hawaii, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Maybe
Yes.
it could be because they're in a foreign place, in the way that they're able to set up all the characters that they're like definitely away on. I don't want to call it like a more far out vacation, but you're in a completely different vicinity, right? So a lot of the time, I know one of the biggest jokes for this season was that they were eating inside the resort more than going out, uh, and I don't know. I disagree only because I feel the moments where you don't have characters meeting up with each other, what they're still able to do is kind of have something for the audience. So it's like you're judging these characters over here, and you may think that you're imposing something on one over the other, but then you may switch your mind when he presents a similar scenario with different characters. So I think while they may not all intermingle as much, I think their storylines thematically cross over in a way I thought was just better than the
Yeah.
first season.
No, totally. And there maybe is a little bit more of like a uh full thought going on here. And I don't even mean that just be detrimental to the first season, which, it's been well told that it's something that Mike White put together fairly hastily and it happened to really stick. Season two definitely feels more like he went into it trying to have it feel like one cohesive idea, one coherent thought. and
Yeah.
and maybe, yeah, maybe that's why it would resonate more with some people, or why it would feel at least thematically more of a piece.
It's
um
also
I don't
darker.
know.
It is
you
darker.
you
I won't lie about that. Because in the
Yeah.
first one, without spoiling it too much, I don't think anyone ends up bad. Even the ones who end up bad, it was because of a decision that they didn't want to make. An incident happens and now they're out of it, which was a scenario they should have gone through. Here, man, this season ends and there are people who are traumatized. There is absolutely no way that they're going to come back from some of the events of this finale and be normal people. They are completely different individuals from the premiere. And I don't know. There's something about that that I think delivered in the consequences part. There's a lot of consequences in season one. I don't think you feel them, or somebody else
Yeah.
feels it, which kind of felt like
Well, yeah, for
I don't know.
sure. And season one, I think, ends up feeling a bit muddled in terms of uh, what is happening on screen and the messages Mike White is trying to get across. Season two does not have that same problem. And I do think it's interesting in some of the ways in which it sort of maybe challenges some conventional feelings about how we should view sex or power in relationships and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I There still is something that didn't ultimately come together as well as I wanted it to in season two. I don't know if you want to start getting more into
Let's do it.
spoilers and break it down, because I feel like most of us are hopefully caught up on White Lotus and are have seen all that season two's had to offer, and we can just talk more freely about it. Let's break this down a little bit, character by character, and talk about all the different aspects to this season. Start. Where do you want to start? Which character do you want to start with?
I have a question for you. Who
Yeah,
was your favorite character in season one?
season one.
Hmm. Don't say the island. Don't hit me with something like that.
Well, so my my problem is that, like, I'm gonna say the least likable character, not because I think I liked him, but because I think I liked the arc they gave him, and that's Jake Lacey's character.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh.
yeah.
Okay.
I
Do
mean,
you have who's your favorite character in this one?
I'm not sure. I don't know if I've picked one yet. I mean, I like Lucia a lot.
Okay, perfect. Because I was gonna
Yeah.
name them as a couple, so let's begin with them. I would argue that the duo of Lucia and her friend. are easily a standout in this season, and one of the reasons why I think that they're a better character or better characters than what we had in season one.
Yeah.
You have a dynamic, I think, this season in where you're able to see a lot of the people who aren't just the employees in the hotel, and then the rich people. You also
Mhm.
have like the people who are coming from the town who have their own thing going on, and I think that the season very much focuses on them because they get the final shot, which I thought
Right.
was awesome because they ended up becoming
And
like
the
fan
first one,
favorites.
I think, no?
Did they get the first shot too?
Well, at least if you don't count the cold open, I think we start with them.
There you go. So I think that they do a really good job, especially with this being in their territory. You know, they're in their homeland. That they're the ones who are able to kind of maneuver the best. I think they get the best outcome out of everybody.
Mhm.
Like I said, a lot of people end up very traumatized. These two, they walked out especially well.
Yeah.
Because when you're looking at them, the whole premise with these two is that they've set up for this new boat of guests. One of them, which ends up becoming a really big mystery, is going to be one of the guys who's hired her. You end up realizing that it's Imperioli's character of Dominic, who he's in the trio of the family members who we'll get to, but it falls apart because that's their long con, right? Like they are
Right.
two women who are there waiting for rich people to come to stay at the White Lotus. And even with
Mhm.
some pushback because of the manager, they're there to do a long con to see who they can get a lot of money out of, specifically in a way where they're gonna make the person believe that they're being held not hostage, but like someone is there who they owe money to. And I love it
Yeah.
how Dominic is able to avoid that, only for his son to get caught up in the in all of it, and he still has to pay for the 50K that he was able to get out of. It's I think it's a
Yeah.
beautiful story about how just like the grandpa was so perverted that it passed down to the son, it continues to pass down to the grandchild, and those repercussions, it's the father who's going to have to pay them. But
Yeah, no, I
uh,
mean, there is that very fun shot towards the very end of the episode where the woman walks by all three DeGrassos and they all turn. And despite Albie, lecturing them throughout the season about, the patriarchy and sexual politics and whether or not they are good husbands, they all are susceptible to the whims of an attractive woman. So it was funny, and I think it's very funny the way in which Lucia is really able to exploit them. I think Lucia, being a sex worker, is the kind of character
it was easy
who,
for her.
on a lot of shows, they might try to be a little bit more moralistic about it, or I think we've seen scenarios like this where, because of her character's maybe precarious nature in like the societal power dynamics,
Hmm.
she might end up becoming sacrificed. And that's one of the reasons why I thought she was a likely candidate for the to be one of the bodies in the end. There's a lot of people speculating, is this going to is this situation with the pimp and Albie and whatever going to turn violent?
Yeah,
And I like that Mike White uh chooses to go with another way with them. There's that quote that
agreed.
she has midway through the season, like, maybe we won't be punished, and they realize like they can kind of do get the most out of this situation. They take they get the room keys and get access to the hotel, so they're able to
Nah, bro,
have one over on Valentina who wants to throw them out.
easily. What's her
They're
friend's
able
name?
not Lucia.
Not
What's her
Lucia.
friend? Mia, right?
I want to say she
Yeah.
was like the quieter one. Nah, she was a sleeper hit right there. What this girl does so connivingly, right? It's the ones who, by accident, end up in the piano position of one of the highest paid resorts there on the island. Those are the ones you need to watch out for. The way she was
Yeah.
able to just accidentally give the wrong pills to the guy who is now out of commission. The way she's able to sleep with the manager by exploiting the one side of her that she's never really flourished on, which is her sexuality, running the piano thing at the end and then getting away with it all. Yeah, I think them as a duo are very dangerous. You got the
Yeah.
quiet one and then you got the one who's very upfront, and I think they played off each other well.
Yeah, Mia's turn was a little bit sudden for me, but I'm not going to say I didn't enjoy her conniving
That's how
nature
good
in the
she
back
is.
half of the season.
It kid sneaks up on you. No, but I agree with you. Just the way they were able to get the keys. And then that one sequence with Valentina, where Valentina's been kicking him out for like what 2 episodes, and then they have to because she has to listen to Imperioli's character.
Yeah.
She has to pass on that just the access to be able to get in there. But I found her character to also be really fascinating.
Yeah.
There was a character in the first season that I was really interesting, but I know they cut her short. The one who was pregnant. That was like I
Yeah.
thought the one. person who we were gonna stick around with for a little bit because I hated the manager in the first one. So I kind of like how the
Murray.
first one ends, but I hated him in the first one. There's something about her that I really liked, and something that she goes through in the second half of the season that I thought
Mhm.
was really interesting when you were talking about the sex politics. There's one dynamic of her where she's running the lobby, where she has Isabella, someone who works there with her, who's
Yeah,
always being flirted with by one of the other guys. But because she's lesbian,
Rocco.
she, yeah, Rocco, she kicks Rocco out so that they're no longer flirting.
Hmm.
And if she was anybody else, you would see that as a dynamic from a boss to someone who's underneath them that should not be happening. And I thought the way that they were able to relay her as a manager, as opposed to a lot of the other stuff that was happening with Imperioli's character,
Hmm.
especially when we start getting into Tanya's character and the circle that she's running around with, about how the power dynamics of being above somebody, you are technically there's one line that she says at the end where she says, "Stop hitting on this woman. I'm kicking you out." When for like 3 episodes, all she was doing was ruining
Hitting
Isabella's
on that same woman.
workplace exactly because she wanted her for herself. So I thought the way they were able to handle Valentina was that of a superior who's broken. But like you said, just like Lucia's character, we never see her as evil. We're able to get into the nuances of someone who power dynamic starts spilling a little bit over. So I
Yeah.
really enjoyed the way that they were able to play her out.
Yeah, I mean, you see how like she's got uh this very unfulfilling personal life, and how that's kind of led her to be so tightly wound
Prison, yeah,
that all the pressures she experiences at work, she's not able to really approach them in kind of a kind way. And then she has this one person in Isabella that she uh has this like side of kindness towards, because she's hopeful that that can spark a
yeah,
romance or whatever. But you know, that it ends up being uh despite her like veneer of professionalism, she has this side to her that is also trying to use use whatever power she has to her own benefit. Just interesting to
yep,
see that dynamic play out.
easily. There's
um
also one thing that each character goes through, which I enjoyed in season two. At the end, they always learn a lesson, or they learn a lesson in a way that they were never expecting. For Valentina, it's the person she was kicking out of the resort ends up being the one who kind of frees her up the most.
right. Yeah, and the way that she really does come around by the end,
Yeah.
it's a interesting progression to track, and also very interesting in contrast to what they did with Murray, being that he ends up in a much worse place by the end. They don't treat the hotel staff quite so negatively in season two of
Yeah.
White Lotus. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the
The
Grassos? I think,
trio,
yeah.
easily.
A couple of the more famous faces on this season in F. Mary Abraham and Michael Imperioli as the elder to the Grassos. Also Adam DeMarco, who plays Albie. A lot of interesting things coming to play in Michael Imperioli's character being a adulterer who is going through a divorce, and how that's kind of fractured their family. And his father Bert constantly sort of telling him like, just be more discreet. You don't have to put all your stuff out there. I was more discreet with myself. I thought that was sort of alluding to Bert maybe having a little bit more going on that would be revealed by the end of the season. He kind of, it was just sort of like a doddering old man for the most part, but I still think their dynamic was fun. I I don't know if it's just me spinning my conspiracy theory wheels too much, but I kind of felt like the place that episode 7 left them was a little bit of like a dramatic letdown. It felt very predictable. I felt like you could see Albie getting conned a long way off, and that they didn't escalate it anywhere from there. Just in contrast to how the Tanya arc played out, and how the Aubrey couple dynamic played out, it was
Yeah.
like the least dramatically satisfying conclusion to me.
If I may, I think
Yeah.
everybody does learn something. But out of everybody who visited, these three bozos were going to be the least to learn a lesson when they come home, right? The oldest one, first off, he's just happy that he was aroused by the end of it, right? That's his big thing
Yeah,
after this whole trip. I thought I
he
saw
got to
like a
see a
daughter,
naked
but I
woman
got
again.
aroused. Exactly. He got to see naked women. Lucia satisfied all three of these men, even if she drained them of several different things. The middle one, he's just happy that he ends up. And I thought they were going to go darker with him because they were talking about how the daughter, the mom, wasn't talking to Imperioli's character, the
Yeah,
the father of Dom. Just like
Dominic.
he was thrown to the side. At the end, he does kind of get his way. He's able to help the kid out in the way that he wanted to, and now he's
Hmm.
talking to the mom. You know that's terrible. You know that for the mom, she should not be talking to this man at all. Yet he found a way back in there. So he actually ends up better. The kid at
Yeah,
the end wasted 50K. Was it his 50K? Nope. So now he's going to be just like the father. He's going to grow up to one day bring his kid, and who knows what it's going to be by then with inflation. Probably another 100K. So, like, all of them were going to end up exactly where they were. I did not see any of them learning any lessons. They were so dumb. They were fun to hang out with, and it's like they were always the ones who were bringing somebody with them. So like the first time they're bringing Portia's character, second
yeah.
time they're bringing Lucia with them. Um, I thought they provided something really interesting to the dynamic of seeing the generations and how they're able to pass on. And like you said, that
Hmm.
that closing shot is the best shot of the three of them and speaks volumes in every way. So I like their Godfather visit. I thought that was kind of funny. And then their whole discussion, like you said, the kid trying to be smarter than them and
Yeah.
blaming toxic masculinity on the stuff that they watched growing up, and just the back and forth between them, I thought was really interesting. And like you said, they're the easiest ones to condemn. I feel, it's like Lucia isn't condemned here. And maybe 20 years ago, like you said, she might have been the one to have died. She might have been the one that
Right.
the whole show kind of looks down upon. But now you kind of see her as empowering. And these men, the ones hiring them, are kind of the schmucky ones. So I'd be curious to see if they're the ones who they continue the story with. Because if season one continued it with Jennifer Coolidge,
Right.
would season two pick another guest to see them go somewhere? And personally, I think it was actually the dad who had mentioned it. There's those islands, or actually, it wasn't them; it was the couples who had mentioned it. Theo James' character mentions a couple islands off the coast of India, if I'm not mistaken.
The
So
Maldives. Yeah.
the Maldives. A lot of people have been saying different
We
things. They name dropped
let
one.
Yeah, let's get into our
We'll get
season
to
3
that.
speculation in a little bit, but do you want to move on to that couple, the Aubrey Plaza, what is it, Will Sharpe, Meghann Fahy, and Theo James quartet?
Yeah, why not? Probably the most obnoxious, irritating, tense, yet I thought the most engaging storyline of the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, I probably the most engaging, but at the same time, like I did feel a little bit of a letdown in some of the turns it took.
Really?
You know,
How
I
so?
think so. I think when they kind of show you um, Ethan getting really paranoid and visualizing over and over again uh,
The paranoid, yeah.
that his wife having this affair, I think it's almost like a little bit cheap, and I think it would have been better for her to not either not have it or not admit to. I don't know if like we're supposed to think that she's just admitting to get him to try and calm down, but it just, I don't know, was a little less. It's one thing that didn't. It made that whole bit less surprising to me, I think is what it was. I feel like it forecasted itself a little and wasn't like big a big revelation. It something that made me think differently about the characters. It kind of played the way that I expected it to. Um, and I do like the ultimate way a place that it resolved to with Ethan having to sort of like talk to Daphne to find uh some kind of like peace with it, and them having their little walk off to the other island together
Mm-hmm.
to who knows what.
Right.
But I don't know. uh I maybe it was just that it was a little bit strung out. Maybe that's one of the places where I would have preferred 6 episodes to 7, but I wasn't as into that plot line.
So you don't think they did anything?
No, I'm 100% sure they did something.
They did something.
Yeah.
Because Cameron wants to smash his wife, as he said. Uh, I thought that the way that they were able to play off of each other in their relationships, Theo James and I'm blinking on his wife's character, uh, with
Daphne,
Cameron,
Megan Fahy.
yeah, Cameron and Daphne being the more advanced couple, if you want to call them that, the people who
Yeah.
had money for a little bit, them kind of relaying the fact like, yo, this is just how it goes. The guy, he's going to cheat because at least, as Daphne said, he is what hedge funding or whatever it is. His workers are like pure evil according to her, but he still
Hmm.
has this like naughty boy in him, but it's still boyish. And the way that she just goes through her life is by seeing herself as not being the victim, a line that she quotes 2 times in the series. Aubrey sees that, and the entire time she's new to this money,
Yeah.
and her big push with her partner is that besides one being a morning person, one being a night person, she keeps making fun of this lifestyle. And I think there's that one sequence or the one episode where the guys are split and the girls are split. That is when the guys go do their rendezvous and they're really high off Molly, but only one
Hmm.
of them cheats. When Harper and Daphne's character go and spend the night somewhere just
No,
at
no.
random, Aubrey Plaza returns back home pretty much just spilling all the beans, right? Saying like,
Yeah.
"Yo, I told you they were cheating on each other. They're not as happy, yada yada yada." At that point, I was really confused as to why. What's her husband's name? What's her partner's name?
Ethan?
Why? Who?
Ethan? Or
Why was he
Cameron?
still
Yeah.
keeping bro code if there's no bro code to
Yeah.
keep when she just said this is what they're doing and he could have just been like, yeah, he did that yesterday.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing to reveal if you're I don't know. I don't know. That was just
No,
me.
yeah.
That's where I felt that because again I like it, but I'm starting off just agreeing with you. It felt cheap, and even more than that, him knowing how disgusted he's been with this guy since college. Looking at the couch where he was smashing the night before with 2 prostitutes, you would have at least told her, honey, get up from that couch. And he didn't. It was a cheap way to get them to argue. But once they start arguing, I thought the way they played off of his paranoia, the
Y-
destruction of their relationship,
Yeah.
very heavy metaphor on the breaking the statue that represents a couple fighting with each other that may and how that tension may turn into violence, breaking that, and eventually having this rebirth as a couple
Hmm.
that you can see as broken, but them kind of coming through the other side. I don't think it was a good ending. I like the approach they took. I don't know if that makes any
Yeah.
sense. Like I'm not happy with the ending. I hate the revelation when he's yelling at her and she finally reveals it, but it's
Right.
like I don't know. I thought he had the balls to go down that line, just the same
No,
way that he's able to end Tanya's
yeah,
rope. But
I like the overall trajectory of you kind of beginning the show looking at Cameron and Daphne as this couple that has these issues, right? They don't trust each other. They play these games with each other. That's not what we think a good marriage should be. And that by the end, we are supposed to see that they actually have a healthier dynamic with each other than these people who
an
have
understanding, yeah.
yeah, that having some kind of understanding is better than like holding on to these resentments and not approaching them because it's maybe the more polite thing to do. I think it's interesting, but like you said, it's just some of the steps along the way that maybe felt a little bit like I always get frustrated when a problem will be solved just by people talking to each other, just being honest with people
Damn,
who you're
Zach.
supposed to be honest with, and there was a little bit too much of that in this plot line, I think.
I believe communication is the key to fixing all
Yeah.
problems if you're at home. But I suppose in a drama you want to see a little bit. You want to see Ethan kill him, didn't you?
I felt like that's where we were going, and then they gave us the fight a little bit too early in
Yeah.
the runtime for me to
I thought they were gonna
think
knock
that
out
they were
that
going to
guy who
go
was trying to
back
stop
there.
him.
Yeah.
But yeah, they could have duked it out a bit more. But it's so disgusting, bro. The fact that he gives him the black eye in this, right? And it isn't until they're back home at the airport that his wife Daphne's looking at him like, "Oh no, your black eye that's right there." Um, Look, at the end of it, you could lead up to however much would have happened in that locked door
Hmm.
behind them in the resort. Whatever they did in that island, I think in the after the credits, what is it? The behind the scenes for the episode. Mike White practically tells you, yeah,
Yeah.
it's exactly what you think it may be. And they come out the other end in the weirdest way possible. Him finally appreciating his wife because someone else wanted her. And there's a couple of characters who end like that as well in the series. People who
Yeah.
only value something once someone else has told them this is something of value.
Interesting. I will just give one last shout out though before we move on to some other characters to Meghann Fahy and
She's good.
Daphne, who I thought she was pretty excellent throughout the show and gave a lot of depth to a character who I don't know I would have otherwise felt like had that much depth. That look she has when Ethan tells her that he thinks that Cameron and Aubrey's character, I'm forgetting Aubrey's character's name, Harper. Then
Harper.
when he tells her that he thinks Cameron and Harper have been doing something, just the way she processes it in her face before sign of calmly reacting, beautiful moment. Beautiful
Beautiful
moment.
moment.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, at the end of it, he does accuse Theo or Cameron. Ethan tells Cameron that he's like, "You're always trying to sleep with whatever." I feel subconsciously in the back of it that never left his mind. So why did he come to begin with? I think he wanted to see, can I still get him to want what I have? I think it's like a really messed up way of thinking that the people who were
Right.
the bad ones, or the ones who were prying on somebody else, it could be in reverse as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Again, really good characters all around. We still got a couple more, if I'm not mistaken. The biggest
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah, I mean, we got the returning character and the one
There
who
you
had
go.
the most eventful finale in Jennifer Coolidge's Tanya, who always has a memorable stay whenever she goes to a White Lotus resort. And this might be the most memorable one of her life.
Easily.
She has a up and down season where she begins there on a trip with uh, her new husband Greg, who we also met on last season. He very quickly leaves the picture, leaving her to spend time with her assistant Portia, portrayed by Haley Lou Richardson, until they meet up with uh, interesting crew of men led by Tom Hollander here as Quentin, who whisk her off to Italian palazzos. You know, people really don't care enough about old buildings, Arturo.
Nope,
Uh,
they do not.
what did you think about Tanya's whole plot line on season 2 of White Lotus?
Did you like her in season one?
I mean, I love Jennifer Coolidge. I have always really enjoyed when she shows up in films. So I was happy to see her get that big of a shine. You know, her character is sort of, I don't know. I feel like her character is so wishy-washy that sometimes there's not as much to dig into, but I think she's very funny.
Yeah.
And the show isn't that focused on humor outside of her.
And hilarious Emmy speech when she got the win for it last year as well.
Yeah.
I feel like in season one she was crying a lot, right? She's still
Yeah.
crying a lot in season two, but it's a lot more of her paranoia, and I think the paranoia was more exciting to see, just to see how frantic she would get and the faces that she would make. I found it to be hilarious. I was not expecting it to be her at all. I
Hmm.
expected her demise to be something different. There was all these theories about her being set up for infidelity, and that way she was going to lose all the money in the divorce with Greg. I thought the addition of Portia was interesting, even though, I love my girl, but dang, was she like the epitome of her times 10. Someone had even showcased how there's a line in the series early on where she says, "You remind me of a younger me." And damn, they pulled up side by sides of what they both look like, especially when
I didn't
Coolidge
see
was
that.
young. The eyebrows are a match, bro. They're damn near the same person. Uh, yeah, I just thought the dynamic of what they had was hilarious, except for Portia being the most the tightest ball of anxiety possible, right? Like she could not catch a break, and it was all because of her own mental state.
Yeah.
Obviously, she ends up in a position where like she has to break through that because she actually gets into trouble, or they find themselves in trouble.
Hmm.
But I thought everything that they went through this season was a lot more exciting than season one. With her being a producer, I also feel that a lot of what she does is just her. She's mentioned that she travels with a dozen and plus suitcases as well. I think she had lost a parent in season one, and her whole storyline there also happens to be about losing a parent.
Yeah.
Um, I'll miss her for season three. I
Yeah.
won't
I
need her for
mean,
too many episodes, but I will be missing her.
yeah. I mean, I like the idea of maybe like it's a little more like baton passy and keeps things fresh. I don't know if we need, you know, 5 seasons of Tanya
Of
around the
Jennifer
world,
Coolidge
but
for sure. We don't
um,
need her to
and
be a Marvel. What's it called? The
Nick Fury
mainstay.
for the
A
White
Nick.
Lotus.
She comes back with like an eye patch. That'd be so dumb.
um, I actually I liked the way that they ultimately decided to bring her character to a close. I think
It was
that
funny.
there was, I think it was kind of leading in a direction that you knew something big was going to happen, because obviously there was all this mystery around what is Quentin doing, what's the relationship between Quentin and Jack. They're talking about the mafia and stuff like that. Who is this guy Niccolo? You know, there was just too many things pointing to something bigger going on, especially once we got the reveal of the photo with Greg in the past. um, I you know, I sometimes I do kind of wish there was maybe a little bit of clarity given in that moment. Although I know that's
I
maybe a
did
bad
too.
impulse. Sometimes I feel like I'm asking to be spoon fed, but at the same time, it's like I don't know if I
You
would.
want to know?
I don't know if I would pick up on some of these things if I wasn't like Googling the White Lotus and reading Reddit threads and stuff like that,
Yeah,
right? So it I don't know. I did like the way in which they kind of show you that she's in danger and give her one last moment of kind of triumph before deciding to kill her in a very Tanya way. Like it wouldn't really be, it would be too tragic if she was bound and thrown overboard on the ship or something like that, right? You have to
yeah.
give her that moment of beating her adversaries and then stumbling to her own demise, because she's often her own worst enemy on this show. Um, and you know, it is like a bit of humor, right? Because this isn't a show, even though it has these dramatic moments and these tense undercurrent of like the knowledge that there will be a dead body. It is a breezy, fun comedy, right? So the way that she leaves has to be kind of hijinks oriented,
Yeah.
not a tragedy.
She went out the the way only she would, right? And it was interesting you said that because some people were like, "Who's gonna be the murder? Who's this?" And people were
Yeah.
like, on Twitter who hadn't seen the show were asking, "Wait, this is a murder show? I thought it was a
Right.
comedy." So yeah, it's the interesting tone that it carries with it.
Do you want to talk
What do you
about
think?
any? I was going to ask if you want to talk about any of the uh, potential theories or uh, ideas people had that didn't come true. Like I heard a lot of, oh, Daphne's definitely a murderer, which just would have been like such a
Aw,
hard left turn,
nah.
I think, in
Yeah.
the final moments of that show.
Uh-huh. She does. She doesn't. She isn't the victim. She makes others her victim. Would have ruined a lot of her lines. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know of any of the
Anything
other
else that you
theories.
thought might have happened or
No. Again, my biggest one was just that idea of the infidelity and being able to duping her into sleeping, Tanya sleeping in with that rich guy, and
right?
then having that caught on camera to like try to get her. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah,
What is
no. The
that red dot in the corner that
Yeah,
everybody
that's what
thought was a
everyone kept
camera?
talking about. Who knows? It was trying to hide the coffee cup that they probably had in the in the shot. The one thing that I did have, and I don't know if they're related, because we're having discussions on, excuse me, who they may continue the story with, and Albie and Portia did exchange numbers. They began the season together, and it was in those early seasons where I had messaged you, right? Because it took me like 3 months to finish the first episode, but I finally finished it, and I had sent Zach a picture of Albie when him and Portia are out eating. And there's something about this guy, the way this guy was discussing things, that made me think he was like some creeper, bro. I thought he was gonna take out a couple bodies at the end. Um, Again, I think they go a softer route with him, but nonetheless, it's still there, that idea of what his grandpa and his father have relayed down of being uh, unfaithful in the way that they treat women. He's
Mhm.
still a caring guy, and you see it at the end. But I think he can go left at any point, bro. The way that he says some lines, especially when he's hanging out with Portia, I feel at the end, the whole reason he was written that way was so that we want her to leave and go with that other guy, only to dupe us because that guy ends up being crazier. Because at the end, Albie ended up being a little bit more of a sweetheart than I expected. But the
Yeah.
way he spoke at the beginning, man, was a little was
And,
was a little thread
like
room
I thought the place they were going to go with Albie was going to be a little bit more like sometimes
pushy.
men who sometimes men who try to act as if they are very valiant and very feminist oriented also have a very limited view of what women can or should be too, right?
They think they're
And
owed.
he was really putting Portia in a box in the beginning of that show and not listening to her the way that you would think a guy who is supposedly like a feminist might listen to someone or try to read signs. Um, and I thought that was the point they were ultimately going to make, and it does not really seem like that's the direction they went. But yeah, it's gonna be weird if they do try to make him and Portia a thing going into a potential season 3. Like, I don't know if that's what they're trying to hint at by them exchanging numbers in the finale. Mike White, in the interview thing that played after the episode, did mention that like we might find out more about what happens to Greg if we hear from Portia later on, which makes me think that that's one
Interesting.
of the people that we could see on White Lotus season 3. I don't know.
Okay. All right. We'll see. Did you like her fits?
Portia's fits.
Mm-hmm.
um, I mean, it was unique.
The
It's
Shaggy one's all
colorful.
right there, but yeah, she had some. You know, I like her when she had some very interesting fits going on this vacation, and
Wait,
yeah, I guess
here's the
she
good one.
she stuck
I have a
moving,
picture
bro.
of the best one.
All right,
There we
show
go.
me. Oh my gosh, bro.
That's like eighth grade. I feel
You know
like
what that is?
2004 popular fashion.
Is Zach and Cody season 2? Zach wore this
Yeah.
exact outfit skating into the lobby. I swear to you. Hey, she was great in it.
Yeah,
Overall,
I like Haley Liu a lot, even though her
yeah,
character did a lot of complaining.
she did a lot of complaining, but I guess when Jennifer Coolidge, when Tanya is your boss and she
Yeah.
sifted through managers, that can happen. I am curious to see where they take it, but overall, I still stand by it. I think season 2 did a better job than season 1, and I think that's a good sign of a good series, right? This is a limited series. It's supposed to be part 2. That way, they get to swindle the Emmys. I think they did it also for the Globes as well, and be able to have less competition without having to face dramas or comedies and be able to face the other limited series section. But hey, as long as it's good episodes and good characters, I'm down for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, like the Agatha Christie novels or whatever. It's just kind of like a premise that really works well and works in lots of interchangeable ways. So I have no problem with them continuing it. And in fact, like, this is a show that I don't think you even need Mike White to continue it. You just have different perspectives come in and
You need
take
him
the
because you
general
got the
premise.
rights.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, obviously he'd have to
Oh,
improve.
hey, Mike White must be happy right now because this is
He's
his
got his own
baby.
franchise. Yeah.
Yeah, so good for
He's
him.
got his own Knives Out or whatever. We were talking a little bit about what we might think would happen in season 3, or where we might want season 3 to go. I think I saw an interview in Deadline where Mike White alluded to potentially doing the next season in Japan. But there is also, as you mentioned, that moment with the couples where they mentioned next year in the Maldives, and I think Maldives could be cool too. We're talking about, you know,
I searched it up.
how
It's crazy.
each season has to have like kind of
A
something
look.
cohesive around it, and Maldives is like one of the areas in the world that's like most affected by climate change. And when you talk about ultra rich people coming in to a resort like that, I feel like that, against the backdrop of something like that happening, is fruitful potentially. I also love the idea of going to Japan, just talking about something that would potentially be a real like culture shock for a lot of the wealthy tourists trying to travel there. I like them switching it up. Is there anything that you would lean towards, or should they go in a completely different direction for where season 3 is?
I like Japan. I like the Maldives Islands that we mentioned because they give them a distinct look. You know, there was something with the White Lotus where randomly they would just cut to the lava spewing from the volcano. And it's like, all right, I know which season I'm watching of this show, right? And I just think that each one should come with a distinct look to get the feel of what that season is supposed to be.
Yeah, definitely. Brady in the live stream comments pointing out that both season 1 and season 2 were filmed at different Four Seasons resorts, so that
Yeah,
might be
they're all
a
four
fun
seasons.
game of elimination to play.
Hmm.
Um, we got a
Also, they I
question.
don't know if you heard they film on the off seasons, so you're also gonna have to see who's available in the off seasons.
Mhm.
Because realizing that they filmed in the cold, that kind of sucks.
We got a question actually kind of related to that from Josh in the live stream, asking who would you guys cast in season 3? Now, I've seen this question or similar questions going around on Twitter, and it always gets responses like Meryl Streep, Leonardo DiCaprio, and like people just don't know how to play this game because you have to play it in a way that is somewhat realistic. Aubrey Plaza, Haley Lou Richardson are probably the biggest names we got this season. You know, Michael Imperioli and Effery Abraham. They're names, but they're not movie stars. So trying to keep that in consideration. Who are some actors that maybe you would like to see on the next season of White Lotus?
Denzel Washington, Harrison Ford.
Would be dope.
Hey, you got a Haley Lou, give me Zoe Deutsch, right? I think she'd be good with the
Ooh,
series. I think she's able to handle something like that if we're talking about castings in that sense. Uh, I don't know if you saw Edward Norton came out during his press tour, during the press tour for Knives Out, and he's been saying that this is his favorite thing on TV easily, and a lot of the comparisons with it being a murder mystery. Um, Obviously, this is even worse than what you said, keeping it realistic for the actors. You know what? Combine franchises. Give me LeBlanc in there trying to solve the next case wherever it is. Um, I'm not sure necessarily on the acting side of things, but I just thought of something else from your previous one. In the snow.
oh yeah, Brady in the
We
live
keep
stream
we keep
comments is
thinking
saying
about
the
four
Alps,
seasons and
maybe.
where, but like why not a location or a different season?
Mm,
So it's not warm anymore. I think a snowy one would be
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, how
What about
how
you?
integral
Any
is
place or
warmth?
yeah?
I do
Oh,
like
because
the
then the body
idea.
could keep, bro. You don't know. But yeah, in terms of casting a location,
You know, maybe inspired by how tiny her role was in Black Panther, I'm gonna go with my girl Lake Bell. I feel like Lake Bell would kill it in a White
stop.
Lotus.
No, you just want her to take over the Daddario role from the season one.
Sure. Maybe she's maybe more of a Connie Britton now, but Connie
Sure.
Britton's also rumored to come back for season 3. Um, who else could we
That
get
is
into a
interesting,
White
right? Because
Lotus?
technically you could do that. They could just be a cameo. They're just staying at the tail end of an episode or something. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm. Who else could we get into a White Lotus?
It's just going to be like Knives Out announcements when season 3 starts. A new person
Exactly.
has been accepted. But by then HBO might even change their name so it'll be completely different.
Yeah, we'll look forward to it on Max or whatever it is.
That's disgusting.
All right. So, any other final thoughts on season 2 of White Lotus?
No, just highly recommended. I'm curious to see people's opinions on who their favorite character is. Other theories, maybe someone else can come up with something interesting, a different place to go to, or good casting decisions. But I'm excited to see what they're bringing next. Don't like their category fraud with limited series, but
Yeah,
I thought they were able to do something different enough, and I'm very curious to see where he takes season 3.
yeah. I mean, it's a fun premise, and even though I sometimes feel like the finale is a bit of a letdown, I felt that with season 1, and I felt it with season 2 too. It is just a really fun ride, and I like just the questions that it brings up. It always starts good conversations, so it's a show that I really enjoy watching, and I enjoy the collective watching experience about it. You know, we've talked a lot on Intercut about binge releases versus weekly releases, and this is one that I'm very glad is a weekly release because it always inspires fun conversations
For sure.
on Monday mornings.
Easily.
All right, so that's about all for this edition of After Credits here on the Intercut Podcast channel. You catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd at ZShevich. That's ZSHEVICH. And you can check out my YouTube or TikTok channels at Multiplex Show. Artwork and People. Find more from you.
You can find me over at LME Explain on Twitter, on YouTube, on Letterboxd, or every week here on the Intercut Podcast.
You can listen to every episode of the Intercut Podcast on iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, whatever your favorite podcatcher is. I like Overcast. And then make sure you're listening not just to the audio version, but to the video version as well on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/intercutpod, where you can catch our bright smiling faces as we break down the latest in entertainment. Watch our weekend must-watches streaming every Monday on the YouTube channel. We'll be getting to that shortly. And please leave us a comment, like the videos, and consider heading over to iTunes to give us that much requested 5-star review. Need a couple more to keep me warm in this cool weather. I need some 5-star reviews for sustenance. So please head over to iTunes for that. Shout out to our listeners in Nigeria for putting us on the TV
Woo!
and film podcast charts out there. Like our Facebook, our Instagram, our Twitter. Support us on Patreon too. You can find all of those at Intercut Pod to get updates throughout the week from Art, from me, from all the guests that we feature here on Intercut. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, people don't care enough about old buildings.